This week we focus our attention aft to our cockpit. Began with sanding ready for a new paint job, but ended up morphing into a complete rebuild. Welcome to Free Range Sailing. For those of you that are new here, our boat Marul is a Clansman 30. She's a fiberglass 30-foot masthead sloop built in New South Wales in 1969. We are currently giving her a long overdue refit in Tasmania, with plans to set sail soon for the Australian summer. To support our project and remain notified of all upcoming releases, thanks for subscribing to our channel and hitting the bell button.
All right, well, we'll just have a quick rundown and have a bit of a look at what we've patched up in the cockpit, because there's all scattered around it is pretty much what we've got, isn't there, Pasky?
Yeah, it's kind of turned into a cockpit rebuild.
So
someone's just started up on a grinder.
Again, we're in a shipyard, what are you going to do? So if we look down here, well, there's two holes that are down here on the back part of the cockpit, and what they used to be is someone just put some PVC pipe holes with some tube leading back into the engine room. I think the thinking was that they wanted some fresh salt-laden air going into the engine room rather than some nice dry non-salt-laden air that just being pulled from the cabin of the boat, and I don't know why. So those holes have been filled up, but what also happened with that installation, water was able to get into the ply that made up this cockpit, because this is an aftermarket edition. So what's happened is there's been a lot of rot, and I had to cut it all out. And we reused some of the foam that we made the Dodger out of, because it had already been laminated with glass.
Yep.
I used that instead of ply because it's rot proof. It's really, really strong. It's impervious to the elements. So we popped that in here, faired it, and that's all been glassed. So this has all been faired and glassed. We're going to do it, fair it again, and then paint it, and it will disappear. We can see an old repair that we did back in Cairns here.
Yep.
Still going strong. You know, so boot prints all over it. So as we've taken all the paint off, we're exposing all the repairs that have been ongoing. So there's been some holes drilled and rot that's been taken care of, faired and glassed. So for these repairs, this is a double layer of 200. So there's 400 gram per square metre glass there, because there's double layer overlapping, and I overlapped on the corners because the corners is where the hardest wear is. So we've strengthened that. We've really strengthened that. Hole repair, hatch taken out. So this was a cheap, crappy white plastic hatch. I took that out because white plastic is not UV stable. So we had spreading wood rot going from either way, and there's a whole bunch of repairs here. We got rid of the old throttle.
The throttle controller. The
throttle controller and the massive hole that was required. We're going for a twin lever throttle control, which does have a few drawbacks, but ones that are within our ability to manage. Mainly that the gear selection is independent of the engine revs. So as our friend Pete pointed out, you can actually throw it out of gear and then into reverse while the revs are still quite high. But it's not, I mean, I've dealt with double sticks before, and when we're in tight manoeuvring, at the moment Pascal's still a little bit hands off. But we'll change that, don't you worry. So that's all been repaired. Thermalite.
A pad, like what we did for all the deck fittings?
Yeah, a thermalite pad, and then we'll put our new throttle controller. And because the throttle controller, it only has one hole this big that needs to go through, it'll be really easy to waterproof. It has such a small
footprint compared to the other thing.
Yeah.
And also on the other side, because we want to use that quarter berth as a sleeping berth, so.
Yeah. And everything here has to be waterproof. The reason being is, like, if we take a big wave and the cockpit fills up to here, it won't go down the hatch. That's a safety feature, that this Clansman's cockpit has been reduced in the amount of water it can carry. You can't get a big amount of water adding weight to the boat before it clears down through the scuppers. So it makes a lot of sense to do that, but it makes no sense at all to have vents here halfway up the cockpit well going directly into your engine room. So they had to go. And it makes no sense to have anything that's really, like, it might be proof against rain, but it needs to be proof against flooding. You know, we can only take a minimal amount of water through there if we get swamped. We need high survivability. There's also like a harness mounting point that was there. We've filled everything in. We'll probably drill another couple of holes, but we'll reinforce it and we'll make sure that it's strong. We fiberglass this edge. It gets a lot of wear, so we put 2 strips of fiberglass tape there and resin that, and Pasky will be fairing that and it'll disappear. But
that edge there was actually exposed back to the ply itself, so there wasn't even any glass remaining on it, so it really had to be done.
Yeah, this edge, it's a really high wearing edge, and as Pascal said, the wood was starting to show. The wood was starting to show back here as well. So all of that's been covered in glass, not just painted over, all right? Glass. There was two holes here. One of them was, I don't know, an old filler cap when I bought the boat, and one of them was to fill the day tank. We've got rid of both of those holes. When I say the day tank, I mean the fuel tank. We showed making that tank in previous videos, the last refit videos, but we've got a tank above the engine for fuel.
Yep.
And that's what this Clansman had before as well. I just remade the tank because I wanted a new tank, not the rusty metal one. Now you can't actually put fuel from the outside into this tank. To fuel this boat, you have to put fuel down into the 200 litre bunker underneath the floor. And then it has to be pulled up through a Raycor filter, which is a water separation filter. It has to be pulled up through a filter before it goes into this tank. That means we can pretty much eliminate a lot of water and sludge problems that plague other boats.
Under my feet is also our strengthened cockpit sole. Our friend Ian cut it out of ply and sealed it for us when we were in Pittwater last year. It was then screwed into the cockpit and waterproofed with butyl tape. We wanted to make it more hard wearing, so we sanded back the paint and gave it a coat of fiberglass. We made this cockpit sole removable rather than solid in case we need to access the rear of the engine, gearbox or exhaust plumbing. Another shout out to our friend David from Cairns. Since meeting him, we've adopted the technique of using a plastic or metal squeegee to spread epoxy resin over broad areas, rather than a chip brush. They push the resin better and are simple to clean, which saves time and waste.
Zero adhesion.
Zero.
Look at that, it's just come
Smooth.
It didn't take any wood with it at all.
There's like mould or something green growing on it. Slime.
Have we stopped it?
Yes.
No.
Oh my god, it's not stuck at all.
Alright, so okay, we've got it now to the point where it's stuck.
Yeah, cool.
So that's,
nice.
See it naturally feathered?
Yeah.
So we've had to strip away this polyester resin, and I'm pretty sure the reason why we had an old hatch here put in by a previous owner and a through the deck hatch here, neither of which were very waterproof, and we got rid of them, but I think the damage was done, so we had some water come under here and delaminate the polyester resin from the ply that's all this is made from. And I mean, polyester resins, it really is sort of second fiddle to epoxy. It doesn't really stick that great. But anyway, so we've stripped all this away and now we're going to fiberglass it. So we'll impregnate this with epoxy to get a nice, well, as much as it penetrates, like it doesn't go really deep into wood. And we'll fiberglass it all so it's nice and strong. So we can actually see through the cockpit. All of the repairs have been where someone has decided to put a hole in the boat and not done it properly. So if you're a boat owner and you feel like just putting some holes in a boat, ask yourself, do you know what you're doing? Because all of this chaos, all of this work, weeks of work has just been caused by water damage, which it has in turn been caused by someone just just chucking a hole in and using bathroom sealants and hoping that that's going to keep the ocean out, which it totally hasn't. So there we go. And you know what? This thing, a 5-inch grinder with one of these paint stripper discs, that is revolutionary. This thing just cleans epoxy. It's really easy to control. If you're doing refits, have a look into them. Paint stripper discs, amazing. And this little attachment here, obviously we're not promoting any of this stuff, we're not affiliated with any of these people, but we've just found this thing that's able to attach a vacuum cleaner to it, so being able to contain the dust at point of origin is a game changer as well. But anyway, enough midday spruiking of products. We'll get to just filling this gap, blasting it up, and resting easy that we've got rid of another potential leak in our boat.
Our cockpit scuppers had been a source of discomfort, but Troy had a plan to fix them.
Let's say Marul's on a starboard tack, so the wind's coming from the right hand side of the boat and we're heeled over that way. This side's the high side. What will happen is we'll get a wave come on board, and on the other side, of course, the water runs down the tow rail and it goes out the scuppers, and that's fine. But on this side, it'll come against the cabin top. The water runs along here, hits this winch base, and then comes up and around. And then because we're heeled over that way, it just finally discovers this hole. And we get like a shot of water coming into the cockpit and wetting our bums because we like to sit around here. So what I'm going to do is just get this bit of PVC tube, and I've cut it. I've just been using my my 4-inch spoke shave here. So I'm just shaping that up now so it matches on there. We'll just have a little bit of an extension to that hole that comes out closer to this tow rail. Now as the water comes rushing down, instead of finding a hole there, it should be able to just jump over that, and I'll leave a bit of a hole there as well, because this pipe will be up at this angle. So the water will be able to get over this part. It'll breach that little dam, if you like, before it can come up and find this hole and go into the cockpit. It's only a very small modification, but I'm hoping that it makes a bit of a difference to our comfort. So the PVC is basically a form that we're going to be leaving in place. We won't remove it. So I'll put that there, and then I'm going to use thickened epoxy underneath it. Get rid of the paint here, and we'll just glass straight over it. It'll just be a tiny little rise. It won't be a kick hazard or anything like that because we don't operate in this area. And yeah, hopefully just a little bit of effort now will mean drier bums. I need to just clear this away, and so that multi-tool rasp will be really good for that. We've just got to get rid of this paint.
Yep.
Then glue gun. Couple of blobs there, then thickened epoxy, but with glue powder, not with fairing powder, through there, get a nice shaped cove, and then hopefully this afternoon I'll put some glass over there. When I'm putting this tube, I just want to make sure there's no jump up. I don't want any water, I want a smooth transition straight into that tube.
Yep.
So that's what we've got now. Even though it's a formwork and it's not coming out, what you still want to do is rough this up. So when we resin over it, the epoxy will have some key to grab a hold of. So to correspond with this extension of our cockpit scupper, I've drilled another drain hole through the tow rail of the boat here, and that's pretty much how the decks of Klansmans are drained, because the deck to hull joint is just this thick glass tow rail. There's no bolts or anything, it's glued together, if you like. So we've drilled a hole through there, and I just used a standard metric 20mm step drill. So all of those steps terminate in a 20mm hole down the bottom here, and that's what I've used to do that. And that means that I can just use standard PVC available anywhere to just coat with epoxy and pop in that hole that I've made, just to reinforce it, just to make sure that, you know, seawater, we're going to paint this with epoxy and polyurethane paint, so it's probably going a bit overboard, but why wouldn't you? So we've drilled that hole, and now I'm just going to coat this with epoxy and pop that in, and then when it's set, I'll trim it flush. And what it'll mean is, because we've added this tube here, it's no longer a hole, there's the potential for blockages. So we'll be able to just get anything that'll fit in a 20mm hole and just poke it up if we need to. But really, that water, as it's draining out the cockpit, it will well here, but then it should just go straight overboard.
Did you get in time?
Yeah, I think so. just polishing it like this, I reckon we'll get good.
We won't have to sand it, we'll be able to just glass it straight on.
Straight on.
Woo-hoo.
I just make sure that that's smooth enough too.
So where we found all that delaminated chopped strand from polyester resin from where the cockpit was originally built, we've glassed that all up now. So I'll show you how it turned out. So it looks pretty good.
With all repairs made and our new cockpit drain tubes glassed and faired in, it was time to start spreading around epoxy thickened with Q-cells for fairing.
We've been fairing in the cockpit probably for 2 weeks now, I think, haven't we?
Not fairing, repairing, rebuilding the cockpit.
Well, I was going to say we've been fairing for at least a week, like just putting in filler, and then it's been raining. But we think we are fiberglassing the very last repair in the cockpit. We kind of found this one, I found this one today as I was sanding back all of the fairing compounds, so smoothing off ready for paint, and then I found this one, of course. But we think this is the last one. It's basically the last spot in the boat that didn't get any glass anyway, so I think that's it. But that plywood was pretty rotten. And we did it really quickly, actually.
Yes. As we've been doing this, some people haven't been following along that we've actually been using different things in our epoxy. Like when we were filling the screw holes, a few people were like, oh, well, that's no good. Epoxy's not strong enough. But of course, this is unthickened epoxy, and you can see it's quite clear. But a lot of the holes that we've used like a glue powder, which makes epoxy incredibly strong, and that's what we've been making our repairs with. So this is thickened epoxy with glue powder, which is just allowed to kick, so it's just gone pretty hard. And then I've laid fiberglass over it, and so without letting it cure overnight, by leaving it so it's almost going green, and green means like only semi-cured, in that respect you get a nice chemical bond, not just a mechanical bond of just gluing something to it, but this epoxy is actually bonding onto it. So that thickened epoxy fills up the holes. It's very, very strong in its own right, and then the fiberglass makes it hard wearing.
In our next episode, it's back to completing our Dodger and installing it on board. Until then, wishing you and your families a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye for now.